Hi, I'm Stephanie Trethui and welcome to Motherland Australia, a podcast celebrating and connecting rural mums across the country. Each week, I'll bring you real and raw stories of motherhood told by women on the land. It's a wild roller coaster we're all on, so no matter where you live or what you do, we're in it together and you're not alone. So, what's it like to raise kids on the land? This is Motherland. Welcome back. This week's episode is supported by Little Ones. Little Ones is an online shop for babies run by rural mum and farmer Kimmy Falls. She stocks everything from gorgeous teething toys, dummies, bassinet sheets, books and more goodies. Little Ones has also exclusively launched the Ethical Outback Wool brand, the only humane certified wool in Australia. These products include swaddles and blankets made from pure merino wool grown at Coonong Station in Urana, New South Wales. With no acids or chemicals added, these products are nothing less than quality. Head to littlewonsonline.com.au to shop. This week, I catch up with rural mum Sabrina Davis, who lives on a sheep farm on Kangaroo Island. Sabrina is originally from Germany and grew up behind the Berlin Wall. Now, she calls Australia home after falling in love with a local farmer while out here backpacking. Sabrina has 2 kids, and while she's had many ups and downs raising them, by far her family's biggest challenge came last year during the devastating Black Summer fires. Overnight, Sabrina, her husband and their children became homeless. They lost everything. Fire ripped through their property, destroying their home, their farm and their livelihood. This is her story. Sabrina, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you live, what you do and who makes up your family.
I live on the western end of Kangaroo Island in South Australia. My family is my husband, who's a farmer, who has lived his whole life on Kangaroo Island and has travelled extensively, but loved this place like no other. We have 2 children. My daughter is 7 and my son is 9 and me and a couple of dogs.
And tell us, what sort of farm do you guys run there?
So we run a sheep farm on this end of the island. It's only a small farm on the scale of Kangaroo Island size farms, but we are also beekeepers, which is pretty special on Kangaroo Island as we have very unique bees over here.
And I don't know much about kangaroo. I was going to say King Island. Jesus, Stephanie, that's Tasmania. I clearly don't know much about Kangaroo Island at all, apart from, the negative headlines when we saw the bushfires in 2020. So can you paint us a bit of a picture about Kangaroo Island, the population, the landscape, what it's like there?
Sure. Well, Kangaroo Island is beautiful. It's actually the 3rd largest island in Australia. It's a lot bigger than people think. It has also got the nickname of Australia's Galapagos, so it has a lot of national parks on it. Mostly people farm or are involved in tourism on this island, and it's very green. I would say we have the best beaches in the world and the cleanest ones, most beautiful ones, and it's just a really, really unique place full of wonderful people and definitely a great place for a holiday.
And farming is a pretty big part of the community.
Yes, it's a very big part of the community. Mostly sheep farming and cropping in the warmer regions, and out our way where there's a lot of rain, we are on the wild, wet western end. We mainly concentrate on sheep farming.
Amazing. And so I can detect a little bit of an accent. Can you tell us, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Germany. I grew up behind the wall until I was about 7 years old, and then just before I came to Australia, I lived in the south in Munich, which most people know because of the Oktoberfest.
Yeah, I have been to Munich and it's an amazing place, and I've been to Germany twice and loved it. Obviously, your family moved out to Australia, so tell us a bit about, I guess, that journey and for you, why your family moved out here and what life has been like in Australia since.
Well, my family didn't actually move to Australia. It was only me. So I came to Australia in 2008 as a traveler, pretty much a backpacker. Just came to see a different part of the world. Needed a little break from a pretty hectic job in Germany. I worked in public relations over there, and just needed a break. So I came over here in Southeast Asia, traveled around, met my now husband, and decided to stay, which I did in 2009. My family, all of my siblings and my parents, grandparents, everyone is still in Germany, which is pretty tough, as you can probably imagine at the moment. But they've always been very supportive of me moving over here, because they've come and visited and have visited, and they love it.
So how does a woman from Germany end up on Kangaroo Island? Obviously, you met your husband somewhere along the way. Tell us a bit about, how you ended up on the island, how you met your husband, the love story, the lot.
Well, first, when I came to Australia, I worked a little bit. I had a few things on my bucket list that I wanted to cross off, things like learning how to surf. I always had this fear of horses that I wanted to overcome, so I worked on a farm and that were mustering with horses, and which was an amazing experience. And then I bought a van, typical backpacker, and went and travelled around most of Australia up until I hit the wet season up in the north, which I had no idea about because I never researched anything. I just followed the sun. And at some point, I needed to come up with a plan B. So I sold my van and started to go woofing. Woofing is willing workers on organic farms. And I found a spot on Kangaroo Island, which was with my now brother-in-law. And I met my husband on day one on Kangaroo Island, and instantly, obviously, took a liking to him.
And tell us about how the relationship unfolded. Did you see yourself marrying a farmer?
Well, to be honest, in the beginning, I didn't really think about him to be a farmer, because he always just visited. We had lots of fun. We just went fishing and to the beach, and I never really saw the day-to-day life that he was living, because he always came and visited me at his brother's place up until I moved over to the farm a few months later. And yeah, obviously, it was a bit of a shock to the system, because I came from a red carpet glitz and glamour life in Germany. And there's nothing glamorous about living on a farm, especially not a sheep farm on Kangaroo Island.
Oh, my life is so glamorous, married to a beef farmer. No, I completely understand. And a really big change for you with your life. And did you think when you came to Australia, was the plan to go back home to Germany? And obviously meeting your husband, I suppose, changed things in a way, but what was that decision like to set down roots here?
Well, originally I only took a 1-year break from my job, always planning to go back to it on my return. So I also made plans while I was traveling Australia. I made the decision to buy a house in Germany when I come back, and buy it together with my parents. And live by the lake, lakeside, and that was sort of the idea. And then maybe find a husband in Germany. Obviously, my someone else had different plans. The universe had different plans for me, and I am very grateful for all the things that have happened, and obviously very happy living here. But it was, not what I had envisioned, not at all. But I just, obviously the feelings were strong, and I did go home for a little bit after my first year visa ran out. Went home for about 5 weeks, but I was very heartbroken, and I missed Australia and missed my then boyfriend a lot. So my mum made the heartbreaking decision for her, I suppose, and bought me a one-way ticket back, and gifted me this trip back home to my new home.
Yeah, and you've made an amazing home of it. You've got a couple of beautiful kids. So tell us a bit about your transition into motherhood. At what point in your relationship with your husband did you guys talk about starting a family, and how did that all go?
When we were together for about 3 years, I suggested that it was time for me to become a mum, because I was getting close to 30 and obviously was getting clucky and I just really, and I'm very German, I like to plan things out. I like to do it all at the right time. And I obviously was ready for it. So we were very fortunate that we fell pregnant instantly. I had very good pregnancy with my son. Unfortunately, my body is not very good in giving birth. So I had 2 very complicated births, but made it through alive, which I'm very grateful for. And it was a bit touch and go at times. But I'm now very happy with my pigeon pair. And won't go again, because it was a pretty difficult time early on when they were little.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about that time. You mentioned their births were, by the sounds of it, a little bit traumatic. Where did you have them? Can you have babies on Kangaroo Island? Or, yeah, tell us a bit about that experience.
Yeah, I had both of my children on Kangaroo Island. My son, like I said, the pregnancy was completely fine, and it was a beautiful pregnancy up until the week 34, when I had an accident at work and I fell and broke my wrist in 2 places. And I was then pretty much couch bound for the next 6 weeks up until he was born on his due date. And I went into labor late that night, when my mother had just arrived about 2 hours before on an aeroplane from Germany. Very good timing. Went into labor into Kingscote Hospital, which is the main town here. We have about 4,500 residents on Kangaroo Island, so we do have our own hospital. But unfortunately, after a quite long labor, it was over 24 hours nearly, and my son's head was a bit too big for me. So I had a very big 4th degree tear, which resulted in a lot of blood loss, and made it very, very difficult and dangerous for me. I had to be flown off the island with the RFDS, and had to have surgery in Adelaide, and then was bedbound for about 3 months, because I didn't really have a lot of energy due to the blood loss. I wasn't feeling very well. And as you know, and every mum knows, that motherhood in those early days takes it out of you anyways.
Yeah.
On top of that came the blood loss and my still broken wrist as well. So it was a bit of a tough time. And I do get quite emotional still now, 9 years later, when I think about that time, because at that time I thought it was the most difficult time of my life. I was very far away from my family. I struggled without my mum, and I really missed her support, which I only had over the telephone. So it was a pretty tough time.
Yeah, that must have been really hard for you. And I suppose, living rurally and on a farm can sometimes make you feel a little bit more isolated. Not everyone feels that way, but did you feel a bit disconnected, given you had no family support and you didn't really have that village?
Totally. And I also realized that I was one of those mums that found the transition from 0 to 1 extremely hard. And then later on from 1 to 2, it didn't really bother me. But just my whole life changing from, the freedom that you lose, to your whole partnership changing, and everything to be about the newborn. Plus, on top of that, all the, pills I had to take, and I still had iron and blood transfusions. And it was just really hard to have no neighbours, don't really have anyone close by. And even though my husband's family is on the island, they live over 100 kilometres away. So I felt really, really isolated. And to be honest, I didn't really make which are now my best friends, until later on, when we were sort of in the same mums group and swimming groups due to the children. So I felt very alone during that time, and it was really, really tough, yes.
And at what point, now that they're a little bit older, I'm assuming things got easier, but at what point did things start to get easier, and how has motherhood been for you since?
I can't actually remember at what point it changed, but obviously my wish for a daughter was stronger than that bad memory. So I decided really quickly to have another child, which my doctor actually couldn't believe when I came in and told him. He said, "I didn't think I would see you for another 8 years at least." Anyway, a year and a half later, there I was again pregnant, and we were planning a cesarean because I wasn't allowed to have another natural birth, just due to the risk of a large bleed again. So she was a planned cesarean, which was kind of strange experience, but at least everything went smoothly, and I really enjoyed having her as a newborn, I suppose, because I knew what to expect. I had the experience. I felt much better. I was physically much better. I was emotionally much better. I also had organized for my mum to be there as soon as my daughter was born. So I had a lot of support. She stayed a very long time. And I also learned to ask for help, which was something I had never really done during my first pregnancy or during the first few months with my son. So I suppose, and also having a toddler at home that just has, keeps you going, you don't really have a lot of time to feel sorry for yourself. So I think that was sort of when things turned around and I started to really enjoy motherhood. And then, I mean, there's always tough times when you live remote, as you would know. It is still challenging at times. Like tonight when I have to pull a book week costume, just out of nowhere with no shops nearby and not much warning. It is still challenging.
How far away are you nearest shops? What's your services like locally?
Oh, well, we do have some shops where the kids go to school, or one shop where the kids go to school, but even that is an over 50-kilometer drive. So most of the shops where you could get anything resembling a costume would be about 100 kilometers one way. And I need a bit more notice for that. So anyway, I probably wasn't very well prepared this time.
And I suppose, beyond motherhood and beyond the challenges of raising kids and the isolation you've managed, being so far from your family, there has been, I suppose, the biggest hurdle that you guys as a family have had to overcome recently. I have, been reading a little bit about your story, the bushfires in 2020 that tore through the island. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so in the Black Summer Fires 2019-20, we had fires burning on the island for 45 days in a row, which was a pretty horrible experience because it was very scary even in the early weeks when we weren't actually personally affected. But my husband is a local farm firefighter who goes out all around the island to help friends, neighbours, or in the community to protect other people's assets and lives. So he was literally out for 3 weeks every day and night already, and we didn't really see him. And all of this happened during summer school holidays, where I have both of the kids at home. It's summer, we're busy on the farm. I was literally running the farm by myself with the help of a 5 and a 7-year-old at the time. I never really saw my husband, and there was always smoke up on the horizon somewhere, so it was a pretty daunting feeling. And the only reason I knew that my husband had been home was because I found a dirty pile of laundry or somewhere on the floor and an empty plate in the sink. So I knew he had been there at some point at night, probably only come home for 2 hours, had a shower, got changed and went again. So we were already, obviously experiencing a lot of stress at the time up until the 3rd of January when it affected us personally. So that day we lost our farm and our house, including all of our pasture, fencing, all of our livestock, and all of our dwellings. And that was a pretty life-changing experience that you obviously don't wish upon anyone. So that's been, it's been pretty tough since then. But you rise out of your challenges, I suppose.
Oh God, Sabrina, losing everything, your family home included. What was that like?
Well, my husband stayed behind on the day to defend our home. It was the family home of 3 generations of his family. So his grandmother and grandfather built it. His father grew up here, and his uncles and aunties, and he and his siblings grew up in it. And now we were raising our children in this house. So obviously he was emotionally attached. he stayed behind to defend it with his dad and his brother. But unfortunately, the fire was just too horrendous. There was absolutely no chance, no matter no matter the preparations. The children, me and the dogs evacuated about maybe 4 or 5 hours only before the fire hit. And we went to stay with my mother-in-law, which was about 100 kilometers from here in the main town. And we couldn't really even see anything in the sky. We couldn't see anything on the horizon. And it was a really scary feeling not knowing what was happening, because at the time the power and the phone reception was down, so there was no updates. And you just sit there and wait up until you finally hear something or hear nothing. And it took until 10 p.m. that night before they returned back to us to tell us that they were alive, and that we had unfortunately lost everything, which at that point in time, you don't really care about it, because you're just grateful that, your husband's still alive. But losing the home, it was terrible. I just had, I was just terrified of telling the children, because I was so sad, and I expected them to be obviously as sad as me. But their answer the next morning was just giving me and my husband a cuddle and saying, "We're just glad you're still here. We don't care about the house." And my daughter said, "Home is where you are." And that taught me a really big lesson, because they don't care about really about materialistic things. You would think that kids do, but in a situation like this, they know that all of that can be rebuilt, and it taught me a lot. But at the time, it was a pretty horrendous time. I was zombieing around for about 2 months until I probably could think a clear thought again. And make some plans.
How do you go about rebuilding your life? I mean, and having the kids, obviously material things don't matter in the scheme of things, but you still need a roof over your head. You still need clothes. You still need food. What did you do? Waking up the next day knowing you'd lost everything, what was your next move?
To be honest, I had no idea that night. I went to bed and I knew we had lost our home. We were still getting messages from friends who were still hiding from the fires. The fire was still burning. It actually still burned for another 4 weeks after that, or even longer, actually. And it was just terrifying. We were still so worried just about, our friends' lives, that I couldn't really envision anything. I think it hadn't sunk in yet for quite a while. So the next day, the community got together, and people just did it for us, literally. So we had, my mother-in-law came up with a solution of where to live. They have a little granny flat in a shed down the road, so we just moved into that. That was just the situation or the solution at the time. There was nothing else. So not enough time to think about anything, because the boys went out firefighting again, and we had to come up with a solution. And then people just rocked up, people from anywhere around the island rocked up with bags full of clothes and toiletries. People dropped off lasagnas. People just, send messages and said, "What do you need?" And to be honest, I had no idea what we needed. Everything. So really, people just dropped off whatever they thought we might need, and it was very, very much appreciated, and obviously also very much needed. And it took me a while to actually come up with a list of things that we really needed. And so we just survived with whatever was given to us.
Wow, what a incredibly, I suppose, humbling experience, as you touched on earlier, just realizing what you actually need as a family. So I can't even imagine what that was like for you. And then looking forward to rebuilding as a family, what were the next steps? Obviously, I imagine that your husband in particular wanted to go back and rebuild on the family farm. Where did you live with the kids? Tell us a bit about that, because you were essentially homeless.
We were homeless, that's right. And that was pretty hard pill for me to swallow. So I took a long time, to be honest. In hindsight now, I would say I struggled mentally for a long time. And all I did, I just functioned for the children. So because it was still school holidays and they were with us every day and the fires were still burning, I just tried to make every day as good as possible, create a new normality, create a new home in the granny flat we were moving into, not knowing how long we would be living there. Trying to talk about it with the kids, but not always bursting into tears. And just trying to catch up with friends, because many of our friends and their friends had lost everything as well. So we were all in similar boats. My husband pretty much went back the next morning, decided to get back to the farm early on, just living in a swag, and then in a shed, and then in a caravan, and then in a donated shipping container, like a donga. He literally just rolled up his sleeves and went to work, which is what he does best and what maybe most farmers do best. And I still admire him now for his strength and his vision that he had instantly, and how he could actually go back here to the moonscape that it was. It was just a big dust bowl of black sticks and nothing else. How he managed to go back here and actually keep a keep a good mindset and be positive. I don't know how he did it, but he did, and he actually inspired me so much that I at some point followed his lead. So after my 2-month zombie state, I said, okay, I've got to do something. Where's my part in this? And so I chose my own role. Pretty much, I focused on insurance and all kinds of money paperwork, grant applications, anything I can do to help. So whenever my husband said I need a tractor, I found money to buy a tractor. And my husband said I need a loader or I need some fencing material, I found the money to do that, because insurance money took a long time to come in, and we were relying literally only on our savings, and they were running out very quickly. So that was where I slotted in. I was the paperwork girl, whereas he was the hands-on man. Ben is just that kind of person too. He would just go out and just work hard every day, have lots of friends support him, but work into the night, 19, 20-hour days, and then just fall into bed exhausted.
And how long did it take before, as a family with the kids, you were reunited, living arrangement-wise and farm-wise?
The children and me lived in Kingscote in the temporary family accommodation longer than we expected or anticipated. We lived there for a year. For some funny reason, we moved exactly on the anniversary of the fire, which wasn't planned. It just fell on that day. We moved back to the farm, and we moved back into emergency accommodation with Ben, which was because our house wasn't finished yet, but my husband needed us. After 12 months of living here by himself, day and night, even though I did come out and help, with the workload a few days a week, he was still mainly alone. It was taking its toll on his mental health, and he needed us. It was getting really hard as a family. The children struggled. Our son suffered through nightmares. And so we needed to be together. So we decided to move out, and we are still living in the same setup, to be honest. We are still living in the emergency accommodation and in the caravan, whilst about 100 metres away from us, we are watching a house being built at the moment.
Wow, so you're living in a caravan on the property still?
Yes, so we decided to be back on the property because more things happen when we're all here, and we needed to come home. I think the kids were really missing home and their normal routines. They were missing their bus trip and all of their friends. And it was time to just feel the land again, to be home again. And I wasn't able to plan a future or envision what it would be like to live here again without being actually on the place permanently. And my husband once said this example. He said, if I pick up a nail once a day, then I pick up 7 per week. If all of us do that, we pick up 28. So we make a lot more progress if we are all together here every day. And that's what we've been doing. There's a lot more that has been achieved in the time since we've moved back over the last 6-7 months than we probably achieved in the year before.
And What's it like raising kids on the land in a caravan on a farm? Obviously, not what you imagined you'd be doing a year later still. What is that actually like logistically and mentally, and how does it all work?
Well, 20 months later, here we are still. It's pretty challenging at times. It's small, it's not great. I can't wait to be all under one roof again and have every single room, including the toilet, under the same roof. It is tough at times, and I do have my sad moments where I would just get really cranky and just want to, I always say the queen now wants to move into a castle. I I'm ready to move, but I'm also just really happy that we're together. I mean, it is always easier to live this way when it's warm and sunny than it is right now when it's wet and, and windy. But it is still better to be together than traveling 200 kilometers to see each other.
So you're like permanently kind of camping, really, like cooking wise, and obviously have you got a little kitchenette in the caravan? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it's like. We don't have a full kitchen. We're using a Weber barbecue. We have a little gas camping stove, and we do have a mini sort of setup in the donated donga that we have, which was donated to us from the government and the Minderoo Foundation. And it is quite challenging, and I can't wait to have a real big kitchen again and an oven. But you make do. I mean, you learn how to live with it, and at some point it becomes really normal. I've learned to be happy about the little things, I realized that in my Weber I actually can put a pizza stone in it, and I've learned how to make pizzas in a barbecue, which I never thought I would. I've never really used the barbecue before in my life until we moved out here, back after the fire. So it was, big learning curve.
Yeah, unbelievable. I can't, you are absolutely incredible. I hope you realize how incredible you are and how strong you are, and your kids, I hope one day you tell them what you've been through as a family, but you as a mum and the strength you've had. I just think you're an amazing woman, and I hope that you get your castle soon. So when are you hoping your castle will be finished?
To be honest, I have stopped having expectations or having any date in mind because I don't want to be disappointed.
Yeah.
There was over 80 houses that were lost in the Black Summer fires on Kangaroo Island. Many of our friends have lost their homes, and I have watched many of our friends taking a long time to build and only just recently moving into their houses. And some of those started about 6 months before us. So I try not to be impatient, even though that's hard. But I know it's coming. I can see it every day. The builders are here every single day, and I can see the progress, and it's really exciting. And we're getting to that stage where the fun stuff begins, where I'm starting to choose tiles and vanities and appliances. So it's the good fun part now.
Yeah.
The hardest stuff seems to have passed by now. So I'm getting to choose pretty things and pretty colors, and then that's exciting. So really, I'm trying to laugh about it all. I'm always telling the kids that one day we will look back, on fond memories of our little camp here and really appreciate the space that we will be moving into. We will appreciate that everyone will have their own room again, and appreciate that we will have 2 toilets, a big kitchen, and an office that we can actually work in instead of working on the dining table.
Oh, wow.
But whilst you do that, you make do because you have no option. And it does, hardship either makes you bitter or better, I've read somewhere. And I'm trying for it to make me better. So, I'm trying to stay positive through it all.
Oh God, it certainly made you better. I mean, you're already an amazing woman, but so selfless, because I have been told by your wonderful friend who nominated you for the podcast that not only in this time of horror for the island and for your family, where you focused on rebuilding your own home and building your own belongings again, but you actually went out there to raise some money to help the local firefighters, I believe, and you raised, a fair amount of money. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I started a project called Humans of Kangaroo Island last year. It was just over a year ago. I needed some sort of purpose and something else in my life while I was sort of going through one of the toughest years of my life. And what I noticed I really missed was my community out this way. I missed all of my friends. I missed all of my, netball girls, and I just missed catching up with those that used to live. No one really lives nearby, but lives like 20, 30 minutes away. And I just miss seeing my girls and just having a good old chat with those people that understand how life on the farm is. And suddenly I was living in a township and I didn't really know the people around me as much, even though you see them in the supermarket, you wave to them and you know their names, but do you really know them? So I decided that through COVID, which had created an even bigger gap, in our rebuilding phase and recovery, while we were all sort of in our little isolation bubbles, we really needed to get together and hear how we're all going, but we weren't allowed to. So what I was still allowed to do, though, was one-on-one catch-ups. And so I decided the very first one was to catch up with a friend and have a good chat. And then I shared part of a story that she shared with me on social media, and it had really good feedback. And it was obviously something that the community was craving, hearing how we're all going. How are we taking this all? How are we recovering after the fires? How are we handling it mentally? And how are we going with COVID and any other challenges that are thrown our way? And so I, found this really great reason to get out of bed on top of everything else that was challenging me every day, and started to just, interview someone pretty much every second, third day. And those stories became really popular. People started stopping me in the street and saying, when's the next story? Oh, you should talk to this person and that person. And my list just grew and grew and grew. And I kept, publishing more and more life stories of Kangaroo Islanders up until the day that my husband shared a problem with me with the upcoming fire season. And I decided that maybe my page could also make an impact. So one day my husband arrived in Kingscote, where we were living at the time, and told me that he needed to prepare for the upcoming next summer, and that he obviously had lost all of his firefighting equipment, and including his firefighting unit, which is, his ute and the pump and everything on the back, and that he needed to replace it all. And when I asked for the cost of it, whilst we were struggling financially to get everything rebuilt, I was shocked to hear how much it all cost. And I also realized that he was probably not the only person that needed to replace all of his equipment. So I said, okay, well, maybe this is something I can help with. And I wanted to use the popularity of the page to maybe get some attention to this. So I did some ringing around and some door knocking, and found out that no one really normally supported the farm fire units that go out every summer and put their lives on hold and at risk for everyone. And they fully, equip themselves at their own cost. So I decided to start a fundraiser. I interviewed 10 farm firefighters on the island to share their Black Summer Fire story with us, and also their expectations and sort of anticipation of the next fire. I was hoping that if our local heroes were feeling quite calm about the next summer season, it would ease some of the anxiety that we were feeling in the community about the places that hadn't burned yet. And alongside those stories, I ran a fundraiser with the aim to equip 100 farm firefighters. So my target was $15,000. Magically, with a lot of phone calls and some media attention, I actually ended up raising over $60,000 in about 3 months.
Wow.
And still can't believe it, really, the generosity of the people that donated, which was, individuals as much as local and mainland businesses, organizations, community groups. Everyone started to jump on board when they heard what the cause was. And it just sort of took off. And I ended up being able to, now at this stage, I have equipped 225 farm firefighters on the island with protective clothing and safety equipment, which means they hopefully will be safe and well prepared for many summers to come. I've also managed to re-equip those that have lost their UHF radios with new ones. And we've also placed 6 pumps around the island strategically at certain locations. They're quick fill pumps to help in a fire situation so that everyone can fill up their units quicker than filling from a dam. So there's still more funds available that we are still discussing on, planning what to do with it. But yeah, it has been an overwhelming success and has definitely put Humans of Kangaroo Island on the map for sure.
Absolutely. It's certainly put you on the map, and certainly on the map for me. I'm sad I haven't come across you before, and I'm so grateful for all the amazing women who continue to nominate amazing rural mums such as yourself. You've had such an amazing story. I can't quite comprehend your strength and positivity and get up and go, because you had nothing. Like, your family lost everything, and you hear about these stories on the news and in the newspaper, and it's just really different when you actually try and put yourself in someone's shoes, like, we live and breathe life on the land, our livestock, our crops, our livelihoods, our homes. And for you to have that wiped out overnight, I don't think any of us listening could ever quite understand how difficult that was. And the fact that you're still going through hardship, you're still, not in your family home. And I can't wait to hear about when you do finally move in. Like you said, no expectations, but you will have to update us so I can let everyone know when that happens, because you deserve a castle more than anyone, Sabrina.
Oh, thank you. I suppose back then, when I decided to do the fundraiser, it was because of the generosity that we had experienced before after the fires. I sort of felt like my scales of receive and give were really out of balance, because we have been given so many things, including cash donations, that I just really wanted to give something back. And I knew that I could do it with this project. So, and it gave me great purpose. It has been a really big part of my own mental healing, to be honest, and to be able to give back to my community. And I have really enjoyed it along the process, and I've met amazing people through the project.
Well, you are showcasing amazing people on your page, Humans of Kangaroo Island, which I followed today, and I'm loving scrolling through some of those stories. I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story so openly. But before you go, I have a little thing called Motherland Minute, where I just fire off a couple of quick questions with some quick answers from you. Are you ready?
Oh, yes. Okay, exciting.
Day to day, what's been the hardest part of raising kids on the land?
I suppose the hardest part is all the driving everywhere, the distances to places, trying to be involved in their social life and their school life, but having to travel far distances. I suppose that I'm finding really hard.
And what's your favourite part of raising kids on the land?
I love seeing my kids grow up out here. It's just the space, the freedom, the animals, the quietness around the place. It's just the most magical place to grow up, and I'm very happy that I can offer that to them.
What's one thing that you wish that you knew about motherhood before you became a mum?
That I should ask for help, and that it's okay to ask for help, and that every mother has struggled at some point in their motherhood experience, and that they are all also willing to help if you ask.
A lot of us can relate to that. And just last question, what's your one piece of wisdom for new rural mums?
I suppose for me, really helpful when you're a rural mum is to find a mums group, nearby, somewhere as far away as that might be. Find a really good group of people, make them your tribe. Even if you have to connect via Zoom or telephone, and if you can even only connect in person once a month, it is just it's gold. It's the most important thing that you need along the way, because no one will understand you more, not your husband, not your mother-in-law, not your own siblings. No one will understand you more than another mother that lives on a farm regional like you.
Amazing answers. Oh, Sabrina, thank you so much for joining me. I've loved chatting with you. I've loved hearing your story, and I look forward to seeing how your journey unfolds from here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you're interested in sponsoring a Motherland episode, please head to the contact section at motherlandaustralia.com.au. You can also nominate a rural mum for the podcast through the website. And finally, if you've got a minute, I'd love it if you could leave a rating and review to help more rural mums discover the podcast. Catch you next week.